The galactic transit hub on Station Areva 7 was one of the busiest places in the known universe. Thousands of beings from hundreds of different worlds moved through its massive halls every hour. The air smelled like metal and strange flowers, and things that had no name in any human language. Lights of every color blinked from signs written in scripts that would take a lifetime to learn. Sergeant Park Do-yeon walked slowly through the crowd. He was tired. More tired than he had ever been in his 32 years of life. His uniform was clean, but worn at the edges. His boots had carried him across 12 different worlds in the last 3 years. His left leg hurt with every step. A piece of enemy metal had torn through it 6 weeks ago, and the doctors said it would heal. They always said that. Sometimes they were even right. He had been fighting in the Outer Rim conflicts for 3 years. 3 years of blood and fire and watching friends die. 3 years of sleeping in holes in the ground and eating food that tasted like nothing. Now he was going home. Earth was waiting for him. His mother was waiting for him. His small apartment with the window that looked out at the Han River was waiting for him. But first, he had to wait for his transport. And right now, all he wanted was to sit down. The waiting area was a large open space filled with seats of different sizes and shapes. Some were made for beings with 2 legs. Some were made for beings with 4 legs or 6 legs or no legs at all. Some hung from the ceiling for species that preferred to rest upside down. The station tried to welcome everyone. Do-yeon looked for an empty seat. His leg was sending sharp pains up into his hip now. Standing was becoming difficult. He scanned the rows and saw that almost every seat was taken. Beings of all kinds sat waiting for their transports. He saw the tall, thin Pelori with their silver skin. He saw the short, rock-like Grumman, who moved slowly but never stopped. He saw the feathered Kalani, who always seemed to be whispering secrets. And then he saw an empty seat. It was a simple seat, designed for beings with 2 legs. Perfect for a human. It sat next to a Vreliant female. The Vreliants were an insect-like species. They had hard outer shells that came in colors of green and brown and sometimes deep blue. They had 4 arms and 2 legs. Their heads held large compound eyes that could see in many directions at once. Their mouths had mandibles that clicked when they spoke. This Vrelian female had a shell of dark green. She sat very still, her forearms folded against her body. She seemed to be looking at nothing. Do-yeon walked toward the empty seat. His legs screamed at him to hurry. Just a few more steps. Just a few more moments of pain, and then he could rest. But when he reached the seat, something strange happened. The Vrelian female moved. Her 2 lower arms shot out and spread across the empty seat, blocking it completely. Her compound eyes turned to look at Do-yeon. He could see his own reflection repeated dozens of times in those dark, glittering surfaces. "This seat is occupied," she said. Her voice was clicking and buzzing, but her translator device turned it into words Do-yeon could understand. Do-yeon blinked. He looked at the seat. It was clearly empty. There was nothing on it. No bag, no personal item, no other being. Just the Vrelian's arms stretched across it. "I'm sorry," Do-yeon said politely, "but I do not see anyone." "'Tis occupied," the Vrelian repeated. Her mandibles clicked together with a sound like stones hitting each other. Do-yeon looked around the waiting area again. There were no other empty seats. None at all. And his leg was shaking now. The pain was becoming too much. "Please," he said. "I am injured. I just need to rest for a moment." The Vrelian did not move. Her arms stayed spread across the seat. Her eyes stayed fixed on his face. "This seat is occupied," she said for the 3rd time. "Find another." There was no anger in her voice. No hatred. Just a cold, hard wall that Do-yeon could not climb over. He thought about arguing. He thought about explaining that he was a soldier, that he had been wounded fighting to protect worlds just like hers. But something in the Vrelian's posture stopped him. There was a stiffness to her body. A tension. Like she was holding something inside herself that might break free at any moment. "Very well," Do-yeon said quietly. He turned and limped away. He found a pillar near the edge of the waiting area and leaned against it. The metal was cold against his back. He shifted his weight to his right leg and tried to ignore the fire burning in his left. From this position, he could see the whole waiting area. And now that he was paying attention, he noticed something strange. Many of the aliens were watching him. Not all of them, but enough. The Kalani whispered and pointed with their feathered hands. A group of Pelori turned their silver faces away when he looked at them. A massive Torvan male stared at him with small, angry eyes. What was happening? Doyen had traveled through dozens of stations like this one. He had never felt so many hostile eyes on him before. Then he noticed her. A human woman sitting 3 rows behind the Vrelian. She was small, with short black hair and a face that looked too young for the serious expression it wore. She wore civilian clothes, simple and plain. But there was something about the way she sat, the way she held herself, that told Doyen she had military training. Their eyes met across the crowded space. The woman looked away quickly, but not before Doyen saw something in her expression. Fear, worry, and something else that he could not name. She knew something. Something important. Doyen looked back at the Vrelian female. She had not moved. Her arms still covered the empty seat. Her compound eyes still stared at nothing. What was she protecting? What could possibly be so important about an empty seat? Doyen did not know, but he had a feeling he was about to find out. An hour passed. Then another. Doyen's leg had gone from painful to numb and back to painful again. He had tried sitting on the floor, but a station guard had told him it was not allowed. He had tried finding a wall to slide down against, but every wall had equipment or doors or signs that blocked him. So he stood, and he waited, and he watched. The Vrelian female had not moved. Her name was Tessic. He knew this because an announcement had called for all Varians traveling to the Keth system to check in at Platform 7. Several Vrelians had stood up and walked away, but Tessic had stayed. Her arms remained spread across that empty seat. Her eyes remained fixed on something far away that only she could see. Doyen found himself wondering about her. How old was she? Did she have a family? Where was she going? What was she thinking about as she sat there, still as a statue, guarding a seat that held nothing but air? His thoughts were interrupted by a heavy impact against his shoulder. Doyen stumbled forward, barely catching himself on his injured leg. Pain shot through his body like lightning. He turned and saw a massive Torvan male walking past. The Torvans were huge beings, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin and muscles like cables. This one did not look back. He did not apologize. He just kept walking as if Doyen did not exist. But Doyen had seen his eyes. Just for a moment, the Torvan had looked at him before the collision. The bump had not been an accident. Doyen took a deep breath and tried to calm his racing heart. He was a soldier. He had faced enemies with weapons far more dangerous than a shoulder bump. This was nothing, but it was not nothing. Because it kept happening. A group of Kalani walked past him, their feathers rustling. Their translator devices were old and poorly tuned, and Doyen caught fragments of their conversation.
Human,
Should not be here. After what they did, double quotes, what they did? What had humans done? A Pelori female approached the water station near where Doyen stood. When she saw him, she stopped. Her silver face twisted with something that looked like disgust. She turned and walked away without getting water. Doyen had served in the Galactic Defense Coalition for 12 years. He had fought alongside aliens of every species. He had bled with them, cried with them, celebrated victories with them, and mourned losses with them. He had carried wounded Vrelians off battlefields. He had held dying Kalani in his arms and promised them that their sacrifice mattered. And now, in this civilian station far from any battlefield, he was being treated like a disease. Why? He looked at Tessic again. She was still watching him. Those compound eyes tracked his every movement. Was she afraid of him? Did she hate him? What did she see when she looked at his face? "Excuse me," Doyen said, walking slowly toward her. His leg protested every step, but he needed to understand. "May I ask you a question?" Tessic did not respond at first. Her mandibles moved slightly, making soft clicking sounds that the translator did not pick up. Then she spoke. What question? Is there a problem with humans on this station? People are looking at me strangely. Some are being hostile. I do not understand why. Tessic's compound eyes seemed to focus more sharply on his face. You do not know? Know what? Before Tessic could answer, another figure appeared beside them. It was the human woman from before, the one with short black hair and military posture. Up close, Do-Yan could see that she was young, maybe late 20s. Her eyes were dark brown and filled with worry. She moved quickly, almost nervously. Her hand reached out and pressed something into Do-Yan's palm. A piece of paper. Actual paper, folded into a small square. Do-Yan had not seen real paper in years. Do not react, the woman whispered. Her voice was barely louder than a breath. Read this when you are alone, please. It is important. Then she was gone. She slipped back into the crowd and disappeared like a ghost. One moment she was there, the next moment she was just another figure in the endless flow of beings moving through the station. Do-Yan looked down at the paper in his hand. It was warm from the woman's touch. What could be so important that she had to write it down instead of speaking it? He looked at Tessic. She had watched the whole exchange. Her arms still covered the empty seat, but something in her posture had changed. She seemed less rigid now. More uncertain. You should read that, Tessic said quietly. Away from here, away from watching eyes. Do-Yan nodded. He turned and walked toward the far end of the waiting area. Each step sent fire through his leg, but he kept walking. He found a maintenance corridor, small space between two equipment rooms where the lights were dim and the crowds did not go. He leaned against the wall and unfolded the paper. The note was handwritten. The letters were neat and careful, written by someone who had taken time to form each word properly. Do-Yan began to read, and with each line, his heart grew heavier. The woman's name was Yoon Marais. She worked for the human embassy as a cultural attaché, and she had written something that changed everything. Do-Yan read the note 3 times. His hands began to shake. His vision blurred with something that might have been tears or might have been shock. Now he understood. Now he knew why the aliens hated him. Why Tessic guarded that empty seat. Why the whole station seemed to turn against any human who walked through its halls. And now he had to decide what to do about it. The note shook in Do-Yan's hands. The words seemed to burn through the paper and into his soul. He read them again, slower this time, making sure he understood every single one. 3 days ago, a group calling themselves the Human Purity Front had attacked 6 Frelian colony worlds. They had used bombs, big ones, the kind that turned entire cities into ash and glass. The death toll was still being counted, but early estimates said more than 200,000 Varelians had died. Most of them were civilians, families, children. The note continued. Yoon Marais had written that the attack had shocked the galaxy. Humans and Varelians had been allies for decades. They had fought together in 3 wars. They had traded goods and shared technology and built stations like this one together. The attack made no sense to anyone except the monsters who had planned it. But the damage was done. The Varelian people were in mourning, and many of them were angry, very angry. The Human Purity Front claimed to speak for all humans. They said that humanity should rule the galaxy alone. They said that aliens were inferior beings who deserved to die. Most humans rejected these ideas completely. The human government had condemned the attack within hours. Aid ships were already on their way to the destroyed colonies. But for many Varelians, the pain was too fresh. The anger was too hot. They looked at human faces and saw the faces of killers. The note explained something else. Something that made Do-Yan's chest feel tight. The Varian female Tessic had lost everything in the attack. Her home colony of Rethfor was one of the 6 targets. Her bondmate had died. Her 4 children had died. Her parents, her siblings, her friends, her neighbors. Everyone she had ever known and loved had been turned to ash by human bombs, and the seat she was protecting. It was where her youngest daughter had sat the last time they traveled together. A trip to visit family on another world. A happy memory from a time before the fire came. Tessic was not guarding the seat because she hated Do-yeon. She was guarding it because it was the only thing she had left of her daughter. A memory. A ghost. A place where her child had once been alive and happy and full of hope for the future. Do-yeon put down the note. His hands were still shaking. His throat felt tight. His eyes were wet. He thought about his own mother back on Earth. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She made soup when he was sick and sang old songs when he could not sleep. What would it do to her if someone killed him? What would she become if everything she loved was taken away in a single moment of senseless violence? He thought about the war he had just fought. The Outer Rim conflicts had been brutal. He had seen things that still visited him in nightmares. But even in war, there were rules. There were lines that soldiers did not cross. Civilians were protected. Children were sacred. That was what separated soldiers from murderers. The Human Purity Front had no rules. They had no lines. They looked at Verlian children and saw only targets. They looked at families and saw only enemies. They had taken the worst parts of humanity and turned them into weapons. And now, because of what they did, every human in the galaxy was paying the price. Do-yeon understood the hostile looks now. He understood the shoulder bump from the Torvin. He understood the whispered words of the Kalani. In their eyes, he was not Sergeant Park Do-yeon of the Galactic Defense Coalition. He was not a soldier who had fought to protect their worlds. He was just a human, and humans were the enemy. It was not fair. It was not right. But Do-yeon could not blame them for feeling that way. If someone had killed everyone he loved, he would be angry too. He would want someone to pay. He might even hate an entire species, even though he knew that was wrong. The note had one more paragraph. Yun Murray had written that she was sorry. She had seen Do-yeon's uniform when he first arrived. She knew he was military. She knew he was probably a good person who had nothing to do with the attacks. But she had been afraid to approach him openly. Afraid that other aliens might see her talking to a human soldier and think she was part of something bad. She wrote that she felt like a coward. And she asked for his forgiveness. Do-yeon folded the note carefully and put it in his pocket. He did not blame Yun Murray. Fear was a powerful thing. It made people do things they were not proud of. It made them stay silent when they should speak. It made them hide when they should stand up. But Do-yeon was a soldier. He had spent 12 years learning not to hide. He had spent 12 years learning that sometimes the hardest thing to do was also the right thing. He looked toward the waiting area. Tessic was still there, still guarding the empty seat, still holding on to the last piece of her daughter. Do-yeon knew what he had to do. He did not know if it would help. He did not know if it would make anything better. But he knew he had to try, because that was what humans were supposed to do. Not the monsters of the Human Purity Front, the real humans. The ones who believed that every life had value. The ones who believed that kindness was stronger than hate. Do-yeon took a deep breath and stepped out of the maintenance corridor. It was time to face the truth. Do-yeon walked back into the waiting area. His leg hurt worse than ever, but he did not care anymore. Pain was just a feeling. It would pass. What he was about to do would last much longer. The crowd seemed to part around him as he moved. Aliens stepped aside, not out of respect, but out of disgust. They did not want to be near him. They did not want his shadow to touch them. In their eyes, he was something dirty, something dangerous, something that did not belong. Do-yeon kept walking. Tessic saw him coming. Her compound eyes tracked his approach like a hunter watching prey. Her forearms were still spread across the empty seat. Her mandibles clicked softly, making sounds that the translator did not catch. Other Varelians nearby turned to watch. There were 6 of them, all with shells of different colors. Green and brown and deep blue. Their eyes reflected the station lights like broken mirrors. They moved closer, forming a loose circle around Tessic, protecting her, warning Do-yeon to stay away. Do-yeon stopped in front of Tessic. He was close enough to see the fine lines on her shell, close enough to see the slight tremor in her lower arms, close enough to see that her compound eyes were not as dark as they first appeared. There were lighter spots in them, places where tears might have fallen if Relians cried the way humans did. "I know what happened," Doyon said. His voice was quiet but clear. He spoke in Velian. It was a difficult language for human mouths, full of clicks and buzzes that required practice to produce correctly. Doyon had learned it during his years of service. He had spoken it with Reliant soldiers in trenches and hospitals and memorial services. He was not fluent, but he was good enough. Tessic went very still. Even her mandibles stopped moving. "I know about the colonies," Doyon continued. "I know about Vrethfor. I know about your family." The circle of Relians grew tighter. One of them, a male with a dark brown shell, stepped forward aggressively. His forearms were raised in a fighting stance. "You dare speak of this?" the male demanded. "You dare stand here and speak of what your kind has done?" Doyon did not back away. He met the male's eyes without flinching. "I dare because I must," he said. "I am Sergeant Park Doyon of the Galactic Defense Coalition. I have served in the human military for 12 years. I have fought alongside Varelian warriors on 7 different worlds. I have carried your wounded off battlefields when the fire was too thick to see. I have held your dying in my arms and promised them that their sacrifice would not be forgotten." The male hesitated. His arms lowered slightly. "Those monsters who attacked your colonies do not speak for me," Doyon said. "They do not speak for my family. They do not speak for the millions of humans who wept when we heard what happened. What they did is unforgivable. It is evil beyond words. And I swear to you, on my honor as a soldier, that we will hunt them down. Every single one of them. They will face justice for what they have done." The waiting area had gone quiet. Beings from dozens of different species had stopped to listen. Even the station announcements seemed softer now. Doyon turned back to Tessic. She had not moved. She had not spoken. But something in her posture had changed. She was listening. "I cannot give you back your children," Doyon said. His voice cracked on the word children. "I cannot undo the evil that my species has committed. I cannot take away your pain or fill the emptiness that must be eating you alive. But I can give you something. Something small. Something that may mean nothing to you. But I need to try." He reached into his uniform jacket. His fingers found the small case that he always carried with him. The case that held everything he had earned in 12 years of service. He opened it and pulled out his medals. There were 7 of them. Small pieces of metal and ribbon that represented battles survived, and comrades honored, and missions completed. The Silver Star for saving 6 soldiers during the Battle of Kareth Prime, the Medal of Valor, for holding a defensive line for 18 hours with no support, the Purple Heart for the wound in his leg that still burned with every step. 12 years of his life. 12 years of blood and pain and sacrifice. Doyon placed the medals on the empty seat beside Tessic. "We're your daughter," he said. "I do not know her name. I never met her. But I know that she existed. I know that she was loved. I know that she sat in this seat and dreamed about the future. These medals are my promise to her. A promise that humans can be better than the monsters who killed her. A promise that some of us will spend our lives making sure this never happens again." Then Doyon stepped back. He straightened his spine despite the pain in his leg. He placed his arms across his chest in an X shape and bowed his head. It was the Vreliant morning salute, the gesture of deepest respect for the dead. Human soldiers learned it during their training because so many humans and Varelians had died fighting side by side. Doyon held the salute. His legs screamed at him. His back ached. His arms trembled from holding the position. But he did not move. He would stand here until his body collapsed, if that was what it took. The station was completely silent now. Hundreds of beings watched a wounded human soldier bow before a grieving Varelian mother. Watched him offer everything he had to honor a child he had never known. Minutes passed. Doyon kept holding the salute. And slowly, very slowly, something began to change. The silence stretched on like a held breath. Doyon's arms burned from holding the morning salute. His injured leg had gone numb again, which was probably a mercy. Sweat rolled down his forehead and dripped onto the station floor. But he did not move. He would not move until Tessic released him or until his body gave out completely. Then Tessic made a sound. It started low, the hum of a machine. But it rose quickly, becoming something raw and broken and full of pain. It was a wail, a cry of grief that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her body. It was the sound of a mother who had lost everything. The sound of a heart that had been shattered into pieces, too small to ever put back together. The other Vrelians stepped back. They recognized this sound. They had probably heard it many times in the last 3 days. Rising from their own people across the galaxy, Tessic's forearms wrapped around herself. Her body shook with the force of her grief. The hard shell that protected her from the outside world could not protect her from this. Nothing could. Slowly, still wailing, she reached out toward the metals on the seat. Her daughter's seat. Her trembling fingers touched the cold metal. She picked up the silver star and held it close to her compound eyes, turning it over and over as if trying to understand what it meant. Her name was Kiri, Tessic said. Her voice was broken, barely above a whisper. She was 11 cycles old. She wanted to be a warrior when she grew up. Doyan stayed in the morning salute, but he listened to every word. She admired humans, Tessic continued. She watched videos about human soldiers. She said you were brave. Foolish, but brave. She said that humans did not know when to stop fighting, even when all hope was gone. She thought that was beautiful. A sound escaped Oyun's throat. Something between a sob and a laugh. This child, this Kiri, had admired his people, and his people had killed her. She would have liked you, I think, Tessic said. She was looking at Doyan now, really looking at him for the first time. She would have asked about your scars. She would have wanted to hear your stories. She would have followed you around the station asking questions until you begged her to stop. Tessic gathered all the metals carefully. She held them against her chest like precious things, like treasures that could never be replaced. I have hated humans for 3 days, she said. I have wished death on every human in the galaxy. I have dreamed of fire falling on your worlds the way it fell on mine. I have become something ugly and full of poison. She paused. Her compound eyes seemed to search Doyan's face for something. But Kiri would not want that. She would be ashamed of me. She would say that hate only creates more hate. She was 11 cycles old, and she was wiser than I will ever be. Tessic stood up slowly. She was taller than Doyan had realized. Her green shell caught the station lights and seemed to glow from within. You may release the salute, soldier, she said. Duhayan let his arms fall. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. His whole body wanted to collapse, but he locked his knees and stayed standing. You cannot sit in this seat, Tessic said, pointing to the empty space where the metals had been. This seat belongs to my daughter. It will always belong to her. I understand, Doyan said. But you. Tessic gestured to her other side, where another seat had somehow become empty. You may sit beside me. If your leg requires rest, I think Kiri would like that. A human warrior, sitting where she can watch over him. Doyan hesitated. His leg was screaming at him to accept, but he needed to be sure. Are you certain? He asked. Tessic made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been another sob. Nothing is certain anymore, but I am choosing to believe that my daughter is somewhere beyond this life, watching. And I want her to see that her mother can still do good things, even now, even after everything. Doyan sat down. The relief of taking weight off his leg was so intense that tears came to his eyes. Or maybe the tears were for something else. It was hard to tell anymore. The Vrelian male, who had confronted him earlier, stepped forward. He looked at Doyan for a long moment. Then he placed his forearms across his chest in an X shape and bowed. For your service, the male said, and for your honor. Other Vrelians followed. One by one, they offered the morning salute to Doyan, not out of grief, but out of respect. It was a subtle change, but it meant everything. Across the waiting area, Yunmai stood with tears streaming down her face. She did not approach. She did not speak. But she smiled at Do-Yan through her tears, and he smiled back. When the transport finally arrived, Tessic and Do-Yan boarded together. They sat side by side, with Kiri's seat empty between them. Other passengers watched them with curiosity and confusion. A Vrelian and a human, sitting together like old friends. It made no sense, but it did not need to make sense. It only needed to be true. The journey to the next station took 6 hours. Do-Yan and Tessic talked for most of it. She told him about Kiri and her other children. She told him about her bondmate, who had been a teacher. She told him about Vreth 4, the beautiful colony with purple skies and singing trees, and Do-Yan listened. He listened to every word, because that was what Kiri would have wanted. That was what being human really meant. Not the hatred of the human purity front, not the bombs and the fire and the death. Being human meant sitting beside someone who had every reason to hate you and choosing to share their grief instead. Being human meant honoring the dead, even when the dead belonged to another species. Being human meant building bridges when it would be. It's easier to build walls. The galaxy would remember the bombing for generations. The scars would take centuries to heal. But some beings would also remember this. A wounded soldier, a grieving mother, an empty seat that became a memorial, and a promise that humanity could be better than its worst members. That promise would not bring back the dead. It would not erase the pain. But it was a start, and sometimes a start was all you needed.